time in Chapter 10, we're going to look at Section 2, or Part 2, the influence of the family. Now, we know during this period that parent-child relationships change. Kids become more independent. We talked about that industry versus inferiority with Erickson. So they're learning to do things for themselves. They need less supervision, although they still need supervision, but less than they did when they were babies and preschoolers. They start to separate from their parents a bit. They start to develop more outside relationships with other adults other children through school activities and just being in school. And so they start this whole process of what's called co-regulation, where control of one's activity, one's behavior, even one's thoughts and values and things like that tend to move, are transferred from parent to child. So children begin to internalize the standard of their parents, learning how to live, learning what to value, learning how to do things. All of this is known as co-regulation. Now, as I mentioned, parents do tend to spend less and less time together. So parents are monitoring activities less, giving less direct feedback. Mothers are still spending more time with children than fathers, and that's typically because usually mothers are, in general, again, these are all just averages, statistically, mothers tend to be more involved in caregiving, while fathers tend to be more involved with recreation. Great line I heard a while back is, mommies are for business and daddies are for fun. So kind of, defining that in some simple terms. If we look at how kids think about their parents, by the age 10 to 12, kids are judging their parents more harshly than they did when they were younger. However, they still cite their parents as the best source of emotional support. Now, talking about parenting, this section also includes a discussion on lesbian and gay parents. Mostly the research has been focused on how children of lesbian and gay parents adjust, and what is the sexual orientation of children who are, when they become adults, who are raised by lesbian and gay parents. Well, first, let's look at adjustment. If we look at the adjustment of children growing up in with lesbian and gay parents versus heterosexual parents, we find no difference. That adjustment or that sexual orientation of the parents really has nothing to do with how well adjusted these children are. They are no better or no worse adjusted coming from homosexual parents, raised by homosexual parents, than they are if they're raised by heterosexual parents. There's just no difference there. If we look at sexual orientation, again, the sexual orientation of children raised in a homosexual versus heterosexual household, there's really no difference. There's a percentage of children who are homosexual that are raised by heterosexual parents, and there's a percentage of children who are homosexual that are raised by homosexual parents, and that percentage is pretty much the same. There doesn't seem to be an influence of the sexuality of the parents over the sexual orientation of the children. It's just not there. Okay, speaking of the family, we also can't fail to talk about the effects of divorce on children. Now, again, we're looking in the rest of this section, looking at a lot of statistics, averages, things like that. So you may find yourself in one of these groups, or your childhood had some of these influences, and you may have had a very different experience, or you may be experiencing it, very differently now as an adult, and that's to be expected. There's always anecdotally things that are going to go against what we're talking about here. But by and large, when we're talking about these statistics, we're looking at average. If we talk to a lot of people, on average, these are the kinds of things we're finding, or things that we do find. So obviously, everybody's experience is going to be different, but when we look at populations as a whole, these are some of the things we tend to find. So just keep that in mind. Now, in any given year, about 1 million American children are going to experience divorce. 40% of European American kids and 75% of African American kids will spend at least part of their childhood in a single parent family because of divorce. Now, most divorced women are raising their children, and most children do live primarily with their mother. That's not, again, not to say all children are going to live with their mother, but mothers become increasingly focused on working when they're raising the children as a single parent. The resources that the family had when there were two parents are greatly diminished. And that's not to say dads don't contribute, but we do find that it's different. Women do tend to live closer to the poverty line after divorce than men do. We also find, again, not all fathers. Obviously, there's some great fathers out there, fathers of divorce who are raising their kids alone, just like single moms and that sort of thing. But we do know, on average, some fathers may become more absent as time goes by following a divorce. Just on average, that's not every divorced father, but that's some fathers do tend to do that. Children of divorce initially sometimes have conduct problems, may have lower self-esteem right after the divorce. Their grades may suffer if they're of a certain age. Drug abuse may start to become a problem. Even their physical health can decline. But this all usually is worse, that it's worst during that first year after divorce, first year after the breakup. Usually after that year or so goes by, children and parents both get used to the new living situation, new environments, new structures, new ways of doing things, and children tend to rebound after a couple of years. All right. Talking about divorce, we also need to talk about step families. Now, we do know that 1 in 3 American children will spend part of their childhood in a step family, because most divorced people remarry while children are young, so are going to have probably step parents at some point. Now, there really is no rule of thumb when it comes to step parenting and how step parents treat their non-biological children. You're going to find some amazing step parents out there who treat every one of their children just like that, as their children, regardless of biology. We do know statistically, though, that stepchildren are at a greater risk of abuse by a physical abuse by a step parent than they are by a biological parent. And we also know that there's a greater risk for sexual abuse, actually 8 times greater risk of sexual abuse by a step parent than by a natural parent. So why the different treatment of stepchildren versus biological children? Well, one theory is, from evolutionary psychology, is that parents want to promote their own genes, want to see their own genes flourish, and be it consciously or unconsciously, they're going to promote their own biological children. Those are the children that have their genes, and they want those genes to be carried on, versus stepchildren who aren't like them biologically. So that's one idea of why there may be, even at an unconscious level, a difference in the way step parents treat their biological children versus their non-biological children. Again, these are just averages and some things that we see pop up in the research, and also some ideas about why those things might happen. All right. One thing we need to also talk about in this section is people remaining married for the sake of the children. And I've known couples in my own life who have stayed married up until the last child left the house, and then they immediately divorce. And is that the right thing to do? Well, again, each person has to do what they feel is best for them and their family and their children. But if we look at the statistics, if we look at the research, when we have parents who are fighting a lot and bickering and just basically are unhappy and unpleasant towards one another, these children of that situation have the same sorts of experiences that children who have parents who are divorced or separated have. So when we're talking about conduct, lower academic performance, drug abuse, that sort of thing, that comes from can come from resulting divorce or separation. We know that children in families where parents don't get along are suffering from some of the same things. Um, Children can also have physical reaction when they see adult or marital conflict. It's called the alarm reaction, where their heart rate's going to go up, their blood pressure, sweating. So, by and large, in situations like this, if the children are being affected, it's actually going to be a more positive, probably more beneficial alternative for the children than staying together would be. And lastly, in this section, we want to talk maternal employment. Now, it wasn't that long ago where the woman's place was in the home, half a century ago. But that has obviously changed. Nearly 3 out of 4 married mothers of children under the age 18 are employed. 4 to 5 are divorced, separated, or widowed mothers. So we're looking at lots of people still have concern about whether employment is going to have an effect on the children. One of the big questions is, does it have an effect on delinquent behavior? Moms that aren't at home and they're out working instead of is their child more delinquent? Well, no, not necessarily. What it boils down to is lack of supervision. And the researchers on this found that maternal employment made no difference, but delinquency was again linked with lack of supervision. And they found this is found in the United States and also in the European Union. Now, we do know there are some positive effects and benefits for mothers who work. Daughters of employed mothers are more achievement oriented, tend to set higher career goals for themselves than children of non-working mothers. Children of working mothers also tend to be more pro-social and less anxious, and more flexible in their own gender roles and stereotypes than other children. So there are some actual benefits to mom having employment outside the home.